He was recommended to us by the legendary Mike Adams, and he's a legend in his own right. In fact, I think I'm surprised they haven't named Maryland after you just yet, Bernie Najar. It's so great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. Honored to be on your show. And how about the game of golf right now? We're really taking off into a nice spring with the Masters around the corner. So lots of people are excited, and it's great to be on your show.
Well, look, I'm thankful that you would join us. For those folks who are listening on audio, you can see Bernie's handsome mug if you log on to YouTube on my website as well. You can check out a very cool looking golf teaching facility you got in the background there. Okay, Bernie, let's start at the very start. Our global audience, you're one of those names. If you're in the United States, everyone knows you. But for the global audience, they might not. So please put yourself into context for us. Tell us about you.
Yeah, so Mark, I started in the golf business in '94, and I've been fortunate to work with players of all abilities, from beginners to tour players, throughout my career. I teach at Caves Valley Golf Club in Owings Mills, Maryland.
BMW Championship was there last year in 2021, yes. Folks. For those trying to you've heard the name somewhere, that's where Caves Valley is.
Yes, so we're a golf club that's open typically between April and all the way up to Thanksgiving. My performance center's open year-round, where I coach my players. I do some work on all aspects of the game, and I try to really help people with different aspects of the game so that they understand how to get better in different areas. And I've been blessed to be around some great coaches and teachers that have helped me develop into the coach I am today, and have helped me understand the best ways to help my students. And whether it's someone coming in to hit the ball longer off the tee, or someone that wants to make more putts, we're always trying to find better ways to do that. I've been teaching in the Mid-Atlantic section since I got into the business. I've been fortunate to be recognized by my peers as the 2004 and 2014 Mid-Atlantic PGA Teacher of the Year.
Won every award that's available in the state there, basically. That's
well, it's been a great honor. I've been fortunate to be recognized by Golf Digest as a top 50 instructor, and Golf Magazine as a top 100 instructor. So worked hard, but I've had a lot of great people around me help me get to where I am today. And I've been very fortunate to be able to do what I love to do each and every day.
Yeah. Well, look, here's where you and we're similar in a way, because you began your career in '94. I began as a teacher in '96. And you, to me, are a bridge between, the wisdom of the old, and I say that respectfully for all the new folks that are joining us here, the wisdom of the old with the technology of the new, because you found a beautiful way to marry that stuff. And from everything I know about you, you haven't sort of lost your roots, if you will, when you talk about the influences that you learn from.
Yes, and I appreciate you saying what you said there. I've been someone who's studied under some of the best. Mike Adams, you mentioned, and Jim Hardy's a dear friend and mentor of mine. And what's great about the folks I've learned from, whether it's Mike or Jim, or some of the folks that I've met through the business in different aspects of the game, like a guy like Kevin Weeks, who is an expert on putting and short game, and some of the folks that are up and comers now, like a Chris Como, who's obviously on TV all the time, working with great players, comes at instruction from a different background. We can help each other, and a lot of times, take things that are complex and explain them in a way to our players so that they can apply it. And, it's great to have technology. I have 3D motion technology. I have force plates. I have tons of video cameras, launch monitors, you name it. But sometimes being able to teach without technology is really important, because some of the players out there, they need a different story. And what we have to do as coaches is give people the things they need with the tools that are going to help them apply the information best. So sometimes it's really helpful to be on the range with someone with a launch monitor and give them feedback on their numbers. But sometimes it's better just to take them over to an area and have them hit some shots to effectively work on improving those numbers, but in the natural. So for example, sometimes with a player, and I did this a lot with Kyle Berkshire as a junior golfer, before we had TrackMan, before we had a lot of the technology we have today, where if his golf swing was producing a shot that we were trying to improve upon, or a shot that was getting away from on the course, we would create a situation where you had to hit the opposite ball flight.
Oh, lovely. All right.
And those are little skills that I still use today with my players. So, if someone's getting over the top and starting the ball left, then maybe we take them over to an area where they have to hit it around a tree, or put a driveway stick at the range, and give them a shot window that induces the right swing.
Well, look, okay, I want to put a bookmark on that. I want to quickly go back. You talked about, look, whether it's driving it farther or putting better. If you had your druthers, because I know this podcast is about power, okay, but if you had your druthers, would you help a golfer, now talking just pure score improvement, putt better, drive it longer? Which way would you go?
Well, we got to know where their game is.
All right.
So if someone is not able to reach greens and regulations because they lack distance, we need to help them off the tee.
Okay.
If they have enough distance to reach greens and regulation, then it's a different story if they're not very good on the green. So we always want to figure out where the golden nugget is for that player. And you'll find folks that say, hey, you know what? I need to hit it longer. And you find out that, yeah, you can help them gain a few yards, or actually you can help them gain significant yardage. But ultimately, they got to put the ball on the green. Your score is going to come down when you hit greens and regulation. Yeah. And one other point on greens and regulation, a green in regulation has to be a quality green regulation, because if you're outside 30 feet for birdie, not to say that's a bad shot, but the probability of 3 putting is higher than 1 putting. Mm-hmm. So we want to have effective greens in regulation, which hopefully for those of you listening, you're giving yourselves not only a chance to make a birdie, but we call it 3-putt avoidance. Mm-hmm. And obviously you need to putt well from different distances, but if you look at the recipe for success, being in position when you hit a green, let's say a 20-foot or less first putt, if you can get that a handful of times around, you can score great. If you're outside 30 feet, it can be a long day.
Yeah, and look, folks, that's the wisdom I was referring to when you tee up a guy like Bernie, where, I think it's intellectually lazy, honestly, with folks. They're like, okay, if I'm longer off the tee, that's just going to amount to better scores, because there couldn't be anything farther from the truth.
Yes, it's going to give you confidence, and don't get me wrong, it's fun hitting the driver.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate to watch the longest in the world right now, since he's a junior golfer, just turn into that incredible power player. But as long as he can hit the ball off the tee, if he's playing regular golf, there's nothing more frustrating for Kyle than struggling with approach shots and hitting them the right distance, because with all that speed, he has to be able to harness it. And that's what's so incredible. If you watch the PGA Tour, you'll see a player like Bryson DeChambeau or Dustin Johnson. They can hit massive tee shots and get down there and finesse a wedge or flight an iron. And the great shot makers have the ability to do both. And at every level, it's a little different. But what I'd say to everyone out there, you need to have enough distance so that you have a chance to hit greens. You're not going to have opportunities on every hole, but if you can do that, that will help your game a bunch. And then if you can get the ball in position, you can make some putts.
Okay. For the folks watching on YouTube, I'm pointing fingers, I'm waving arms, I'm smiling right now because I'm stalling a little bit from the gold here. Just one more thing, because you talk about the power and you reference Kyle, who we're going to weave in and out of this conversation here. To me, and I want your take, please, Bernie, power becomes a weapon when the shot thereafter is good. You understand what I'm saying? So I can bash at 330, but then if I don't hit a quality second, back to your greens, effective greens in regulation, then the 330 drive was essentially moot. But if I can hit that length drive and then maybe a Dustin Johnson or a Justin Thomas or someone feather that wedge in there nice and tight, then that advantage begins to gain momentum. Do you agree with that?
100%. And if you can be a great second shot player in golf, you can score really well. Mm-hmm. You do need to be in play off the tee. You need to be somewhere where you're not losing strokes off the tee. It's going to happen. You're going to hit the ball where you're out of play, or you might go out of bounds. But if that happens a lot, then your driver is costing you shots every round. If you have enough distance, and in the big picture, if you're in the rough, you can certainly hit the green from the rough.
Yeah.
Where people get into trouble that lack distance is they might hit a bunch of fairways, but they never can reach the green.
Gotcha.
And that population where we're going to help you the most is obviously, yeah, we'd love to get you a little further off the tee, but let's think about your strategy. Where are you going with your second shot? Should you maybe just play to a yardage where you can hit a good wedge shot into a makeable putt distance versus knocking it up by the green where you might leave yourself a really tough short game shot, and now it's really hard to score from there. So this is a game where you're playing chess a bit at different points, and distance is really important. And it's also something where, you know, sometimes you're not playing the right tees. You might be playing a golf course that's set up way too long for your skill set, you know. So where I see a lot of folks struggle, they might only hit it 200 yards off the tee, and they get to a 400-yard par 4 and they got to hit it perfect off the tee and then hopefully run something up onto the green, where they'd have so much more fun playing a 350 par 4.
Yeah.
And I think Jack Nicklaus says it best in that you got to play it forward. You got to learn to play from different tees so that you can actually get out there and score. Otherwise, everything's a par 5 or 6.
Oh, okay. That stuff is brilliant. I could stay there for forever, essentially, because there's so many ways you could milk that and improve people's scoring. It's basically saying don't ski the black diamond slope if you can't ski the black diamond slope. But yeah, here's where we go. Okay. The first off, let's move into the speed and easy ways to gain power off the tee. You've coached Kyle since he was young in school. Now he's essentially the trendsetter in driving distance. I had a conversation with Bryson DeChambeau, who said he's learned more about driving the ball long from Kyle than he has from most everybody. So I want to start off with this question, and I know it's kind of generic, so I'll let you build on it. You've watched Kyle grow from probably long as a college, as a high school kid, to now immense. For the average golfer listening to this, what are acceptable gains off the tee? I mean, you aren't necessarily going to be a 15 handicapper and say, well, I'm going to pick up 40, 50 yards off the tee. What say you about managing expectations when it comes to power?
So the first thing is you got to look at everything like it's a car. You know, like, for example, if I'm watching someone who's a fast car, what I'm watching is an elite athlete typically that has had explosive speed and power from another sport.
Okay.
And so they can access that in their golf swing once they're coached properly. The other thing is you're going to see people that they're like the slow car. They don't really have the horsepower. They're not conditioned to go fast. They never did anything athletically that would teach them, we'll say, to fire in the speed interval the way they need to.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that those players can't gain on where they are, but their upside might be smaller. And the reason I say that is I teach people that are of all ages. And I can tell you, I've taken people well into their 70s, even into their 80s, and picked up distance. I just did a golf school in Florida, and I had an 80-year-old in the school who picked up 15 yards.
Wow, awesome. And
a lot of that was just getting them to move their body better, because at every age and today's society, most of us are sitting too much.
Yeah.
Which shuts down a big segment in your golf swing. So if you sit a lot, typically your hip flexors are tight. And from there, all of a sudden, everything, we'll say, below your waist isn't working as well as it should. So if you can get people moving better, and let's just say, for example, I have a new student who comes in who wants to hit the ball longer. I want to look at their body as they swing and hit shots. I'm going to watch them. I've got some physical screens that I'm going to use to see how and the best way they can move. And if they have opportunities to move better and we get them to do it, there's no question they can pick up 7 to 10 miles an hour.
Okay. Well, I'm sure folks are being like, oh, that's all fine and dandy. Now, how about diving into this a bit more, Bernie? You talk about the hip flexors. I mean, that's rampant.
Yes.
About all and sundry. Anyone likely watching this podcast, yours truly here is tight in that area, sitting down. Yeah. Share a quick nugget, maybe an insight how to improve that area, please.
Well, the first thing you got to realize is when you sit all day, when you first get up, you need to warm up the system. And as simple as it sounds, going for a little walk would help you.
Okay.
because your body's going to reset typically after you walk. But you can do some very, we'll say, simple internal hip rotation exercise and external hip rotation exercises just to warm things up. And it can be as simple as standing and maybe using something to support your body. So you might have one hand on a table and lift up your leg and work your leg into internal hip rotation and then external hip rotation.
Yeah.
And I could demonstrate that if you want. I don't know.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, please. For the folks on YouTube, you're about to see what he's up to.
Yeah, so
I'll try and describe.
you'll excuse my socks. I'm at my house here, but pretty much I'm just using this stool. I'm going to lift up that leg, and then that would be internal hip rotation. Back to neutral. That would be external hip rotation. And when you do this, that is going to be done on both sides. And that could be something, again, just get up from your office chair or wherever you're sitting and do that every hour. Because I'm telling you, whether you're driving in the car or whether you're stuck at your desk doing Zooms all day, this area gets really tight, puts a lot of strain on your back, and all of a sudden you're going to get into a mess with your golf swing.
Okay, while you grab your stool and come back, I'm going to describe for the people in that car, for goodness sakes, don't keep your eyes on the road and your hands on the wheel. The external hip rotation, Bernie was standing on one leg, opposite leg kind of with the thigh parallel to the ground, and then he essentially just opened his leg and turned it to his side some and stretched as far as he could. The internal, from the same position, it was like he was lifting the foot away from him and sort of getting the knee going inward a little bit. Two super exercises and very simple to do. And you recommend, doing this upon the hour, essentially through the day?
If you're sitting at your desk, you need to get up and do this. Another one I'll just say is a simple hip flexor stretch. I'll just back up.
All right.
And you're going to grab your leg and stretch the hamstring. Let me just do this with a little support here. Like this.
Yeah, that one, folks, you've all done it before. You just support yourself, you lean on something, then with the opposite leg, you raise it up behind you, you grab it with that arm, right leg, right arm, for argument's sake, and you just pull it back, and that'll essentially light you up if you're a little stiff. I love the waking up of the lower body. Let's, because that has an effect throughout the pivot everywhere. As easy ways to gaining power, I guess the first port of call is just good contact. You agree with that, right? Striking the ball solidly. Okay.
Impact points really important, and making sure that you are aware that there's a lot of we'll say speed training going on where people are swinging training aids to generate more club speed. And while that's a good activity, and certainly you can gain club speed by doing some of those protocols, ultimately what gives you distance is ball speed. And club speed and ball speed, there's a relationship. And for those of you who might swing 100 miles an hour, just to make the math easy, a really good smash factor would be 1.5. That would yield you 150 miles an hour of ball speed. Now, there are players that when they swing faster, they actually miss-hit their shots more. They actually lose ball speed and they become less efficient, even on a long drive tour. And I can tell everyone that one of the big factors that helps Kyle against his competition is how well he strikes the ball in the club face. His impact point is incredibly consistent. And I've seen some of the others who are almost as fast or as fast as Kyle. And the big difference is he's hitting it more solid more often. How you can apply that to your game is get yourself a dry erase marker and just take that marker and draw on the club face and take a look at your impact point. See where you're hitting the ball in the face. If you're not getting near the center, if you're missing on the toe side, maybe you're too far from the ball when you set up. If you're on the heel side, maybe you're too close. But keep trying to work on centeredness of contact, because that's such a big deal. And I'd rather you swing at 90 miles an hour and hit it solid than trying to swing at 100 and miss-hit it.
I'm so glad you say that, because, you're right. Everything's about speed right now, and people just talk about CHS, club head speed, but it's about the ball speed. And I love the dry erase marker thing, or even a Sharpie, because it will wear off initially, where you can put the foot powder on there, but that stuff, it shows, but that marker will really leave the dimple impression, and leave some on the golf ball too. Something else about Kyle, you talk about the centeredness of the contact. I want to get into the footwork some, but the one thing to me that he does just so well for someone who hits the ball so hard is the application of the pace. You know, where the swing accelerates and decelerates is just, it's heavenly to me. Talk a little bit about that, because so many folks, when they get into the mode to hit hard, Bernie, you've seen them, they're just whipping the thing back and forth like an angry cat's tail, and their speed not where the golf ball is, you know?
Well, so, powerless effort,
Effortless power.
power,
Yeah.
right? So that's one of Mike Adams, that's one of his better quotes. And he's great at coming up with stuff. But, when you're trying to hit something really hard, it's natural to tense up before you hit. And they're players, we call them swingers, and they're players we call hitters. And so if you think of Kyle's golf swing, it's nice and long. Don't get me wrong, he's hitting it hard. He's trying to hit the ball hard, but he's allowing the club to swing a lot more freely than most of the competition. And there are folks that have shorter back swings that hit the ball plenty hard, a John Rahm, a Tony Finau.
Mm-hmm.
And even though they're short and they look like they're really muscling the ball with that short swing, they're still free enough with their arms, their wrists to snap the club, to crack the whip, so to speak, and hit great shots. And if you contrast that with some of the folks that might be very powerful in their upper body, they're putting a lot of effort into it, they really don't get anything out of it.
Mm-mm.
So to help you understand that, the swing, it flows ideally back and through. And long driving, it's a little different in that if you're really a long driver, you're no chance you're swinging the club short of parallel and competing with long drive. I mean, one of the absolutes is the hands have to go in a big arc.
Gotcha.
And a lot of guys and gals on long drive tours, they will bend their lead arm to help that club get back further. And, so many of us have been told, keep your left arm straight if you're a right-handed golfer. That's probably a big power killer, because if you're trying to keep it straight, you will not get your hands to travel further or far enough in the arc.
Unless you really just turn your body almost out of its own center, right?
Yeah, it would be pretty hard. So most people, especially anybody that took up golf after the age of 18, neurologically, your arm doesn't want to stay extended in that motion. The kids that you see at junior golf, they can do it a lot easier because they haven't developed the muscle tissue. But the main thing is you got to create a big arc. Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number two, you have to have a base of support that helps you generate that arc. And whether you want to have a little footwork action like you see Kyle doing, where you shift left, right, he does that, believe it or not, more for rhythm and timing than anything else. It helps him start a swing consistently.
I want to stop there for a second, because that's fascinating. And you talk about the rhythm in the arc and how he uses that as a cadence, almost a metronome, if you will. You can see the rhythm coming from the feet.
Yes.
I feel like that's kind of one of his weapons, I'm assuming. I mean, you know it intimately, because that looks to me like it sets up the entire harmony of all of this movement.
Yeah, it's a great way to describe it, harmony. So, if you watch, I'll back up just to help describe this a little better. But when he's over the ball and he's moving a little bit forward and back, from right here, when his right heel lands, that club's going back.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, and you could see the same footwork and great motion from the feet up with Ben Hogan back in the day when he'd go to hit a really long tee ball. It wasn't as pronounced, but he definitely went left to go right, meaning and you consider Rory McIlroy, a lot of great players. They'll actually forward press a little bit. Gary Player would kick his knee.
Mr. Player taught me that, and it was amazing with that little right knee, the trail knee kick in. The body would open a little bit, and it sort of gives the backswing, the pivot, a running start, for lack of a better descriptor.
Yeah, and that's something I would say to everyone. If you can work on that a little bit, when I say a little, it shouldn't be everything that you occupy yourself with, but get a consistent start to your swing. It will flow a lot better. Everybody has a different trigger, but one thing you'll find, if you just lightly move your feet back and forth, you'll counterbalance nicely and you won't get stuck over the ball. Getting stuck over the ball is easy to do in golf because the ball's not moving. I will tell you, most everyone, once we get you moving a little better from the feet up, As I mentioned before, an 8-year-old at one of my golf schools a few weeks ago picked up 15 yards. It was literally getting her to move her feet.
Isn't it
She had
crazy?
not moved her feet in
Isn't it?
some time. And
Isn't
she loved it. She felt like she was dancing.
Yeah,
And
well,
you
that's
know
the
what?
thing.
We need motion. Going back to what are most people doing all day? You're sitting. Get out of that chair and move. It's going to help you.
And isn't it crazy that every other speed discipline, and I'm just thinking of bat and ball sports, tennis, baseball, cricket, when you're hitting stuff, there's a lightness in the feet. And
Yes.
every other sport like tennis, for argument's sake, or cricket, you got to step to the pitch of the ball. And so the movement is generated from the ground because that's the biggest, strongest muscles. And that's where I love what Carl does. And honestly, I'll tell you, as an instructor, from me to you, his teacher, I've used that with folks, and it's been uncanny how all of a sudden they were enlightened as to, okay, this is sort of the timing between what my upper body and my lower body are doing throughout this very quick 1-second endeavor, which is a golf swing.
Yes. And, I would say, to echo on those words, you're going to find almost everyone, once you free them up with giving them some continuous motion,
Mhm.
the timing of their swing becomes more natural to them.
Yeah.
It's not static. And, one thing I will say a lot of good players do on their practice swings, I'm going to grab a club just because I think it's important to show this for the folks watching on your YouTube.
Okay.
Try to do your practice swings a little more with the club in front, like this. Start the club forward and then go back. You'll see Tiger Woods do this in his pre-shot routine. Don't start the club static. Don't start it right here and then begin your swing. Keep it a little bit off the ground.
And almost, it's almost to me, yeah, it's almost to me as you're doing that, and it's, I'm not dropping names here, but it's a thing Nick Price taught me way, way back. And he does a drill where he actually hits balls with a club head starting out in front of the ball. He swings it from that running start, the body responds. And in a funny sort of a way, in an area where it's like the body pivot and rotation and all these sorts of buzz phrases, coming out and hitting the internet, and everyone's trying to rotate and leaving the club all behind them everywhere. You know what I'm talking about. When you're doing that drill that you were describing, and for the folks who couldn't see it, Bernie was just swinging the club back and forth and allowing himself to respond to it. It's like the club has a say-so in where it wants to go and how your body must move to support it. Am I right?
Love it. Yeah. David Ledbetter talked about this back in the day with Nick, and I think he called it the momentum drill.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And they would do that a lot. And I love the fact that we're getting the club syncing up with the body more.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's just all about, first of all, don't get stuck at the ball.
Yeah.
Great players stay in motion. I think George Knudson, if you went back in time, one of the great ball strikers, he talked a lot about staying in motion. He watched Ben Hogan a lot. And it's more of a dance than set up, look at a ball, and try to hit it. Try to flow from start to finish. That will help your golf immensely.
We could clip this podcast right there and you would unlock a whole lot of golfers. You take the shackles off. Okay, let's continue with that motion, because I love motion to start. I love the club swinging away from the ball. That swing helps to create the big wide arc you were talking about, in my opinion.
Yes.
One thing Carl does, look, he's a high skilled guy. Let's acknowledge that. And I don't think everybody can do this, but there's a real freedom in how his hips move. That trail leg of his straightens. I mean, it's like he's trying to almost reach for the sky as part of his power move. Why don't you comment over that, please?
Well, Kyle, as a junior golfer, was not a big kid. And one of the theories we have, and it's coming full circle with a lot of the education that is out there now in junior golf development that I've learned from some of the folks at TPI. When you look at different growth velocities in kids and different speed windows, and just when you see kids suddenly gain a bunch of power or gain a bunch of speed, and they're not always the same, but because he was smaller and competing against a lot of players that were bigger than him, he was in his speed window a lot longer because he was a late bloomer.
Okay, right.
And to keep up with these other kids, he had to really do some things to the max to hit the ball far. And what Kyle did as a kid was he would gain a lot of hand height by If you watch him, he did even now, you'll see a lot of this when he begins his swing, but he'd really pressure his abdominal region and get his rib cage up.
Gotcha.
And that's something where I don't want to get too technical, but that allows him to get more vertical force working for him in the downswing, which is a big piece of the puzzle to hit the ball far. And for those of you listening or watching, that's where you see these players, they're actually going to get their pressure down into the ground a lot more, really maxes out right before impact. But imagine he's getting himself in a place much higher so he can effectively put maximum force into the ground before impact.
Well,
And the reaction force to that is ultimately what unloads that club. And, you see these folks that are going at high speeds, the lead side is literally not even on the ground at impact.
mm-hmm.
It's very explosive. But the main thing I would say to everyone is you have to flow from start to finish. And great athletes are much more apt to do that. And if you let momentum work for you in the golf swing, you will pick up more distance. And when I say that, let your body swing so that your mass is following your swing properly. So much of the mistake people make in a golf swing, they pivot where they're so fixated on turning, the center of mass goes in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they've turned, but they've loaded around their lead side. And all of a sudden, when they go through the ball, they go back around their trail side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's some great players that can do this at a very high level, but they can't hit it as far. The folks that can load properly, lower half is like a pendulum. So if you can think, if you like your belt buckle moving side to side, that's going to help you get motion there. So anything you can do to help with that, assuming your body will let you do that.
I love that. Quickly to touch on that vertical force thing you were talking about too. A lot of folks are trying to plug in the ground because, again, they've heard this somewhere, and then they're going to plug in to push off the ground, where you've got to set up the plug-in phase. You can't just be low and then try and plug into the ground further. Your knees will get all in the way of stuff. Wouldn't you think so?
Oh, yeah. It can get messy. And what I would say to everyone, if you have ever watched anybody play baseball, tennis, throw a ball, when you change directions, your legs are going to push against the ground.
Yeah.
You're always twisting the ground in rotary sports. That's why we wear cleats.
Mm-hmm.
But if the backswing for you is an arm event, meaning your head's down and you're lifting your arms up,
yeah,
you're not going to generate any of what we're describing.
No.
So if we can, let's get that lower half moving a little bit, encourage some motion here, and that's going to help you do what we're talking about.
Awesome. Okay, I think an easy way to pick up a little extra ball speed, not necessarily club head speed, or let me call it club head speed properly appropriated, is ball position. I want you to go there for a little while, because you watch these long drivers. I mean, they got the ball way up there on oversized tees. The thing's way forward in the stance. They're catching on the way up there. They're really increasing launch angle. So why don't you touch on that a bit, please, Bernie? So
the faster you swing, a couple of things you got to know. One is if you somehow go up in speed, 10 miles an hour, mm-hmm. you're probably going to have to get refit for your driver. So let's say that you swing your driver and it was fit for you and you swing at 80 miles an hour and you go see a coach that helps you increase your speed, or you come to one of my power and speed programs and I get you 10 miles an hour faster. Mm-hmm. We're going to probably lower the loft on your driver after doing that work, because the more speed you have, the higher the ball is going to launch. And what happens at every level, and I see this a lot with juniors, I might have a junior golfer that I start with 10, 11, 12 years old. As they get faster, we have to go down and loft. Yeah. The opposite is true if you've lost speed. So many people, they played, let's say, a 9-degree driver their whole life, and they keep trying to play it. And as they get older, they lose speed and they don't add loft to the driver. So you're on the other side of the equation, and it's fine. We can still help you there too. You might need more loft, but the ultimate thing is to get on a launch monitor with the right fitter or swing coach to check that. But what you have to keep in mind with all this stuff is your equipment. From a ball speed perspective, the fastest ball speed you're going to generate is figuring out the least amount of loft you can use, because the ball is going to leave quicker with less loft.
Gotcha. All right.
All right. If you can do that, then your ball position needs to be where you're making solid contact. Most long drivers are swinging upward. You've all probably heard about a positive attack angle. And if you're hitting up more, then you probably want the ball on a high tee. Yeah. Now, this could be tragic if you're a player who hits down on the driver and you tee it up high, because next thing you know, you got a pop fly. But if you can learn to hit the ball off a higher tee, that's going to encourage you to swing a little more, we'll say upward with the club head as you strike the ball. Normally thinking about a high draw is helpful to work on that. Be careful doing what I'm saying. If you're someone who likes to hit low fades, it could mess you up. But usually a club swinging up is closing a little quicker. And usually if the club's closing, the loft's down a bit. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a magic bullet there to think about, maybe hitting a little bit of a draw. So coming from the inside, hitting up slightly, that would be a good way to work on that. But again, ball position, tee height, that's player dependent. And the super high tees you're seeing those folks use, it's because they're trying to hit up so much and they're using 3, 4, 5 degree loft drivers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, for fear of having the Twitter police come down on me now, I'm going to say something that you've touched on. I want to highlight that. Look, because of the shape of the arc of the swing, typically the rule says for balls to get drawn, the ball should move back in your stance a little bit, and for it to get faded, it should move forward in your stance, because then with the ball back, the path is outward. With the ball forward, the path should be, not guaranteed, more inward, so a little bit more left for the right-hander. But you made a very appropriate point there. When the ball's on the left side or the lead side of the arc, the club face is closing there. If the face is closing to wherever it's going, it's creating draw. So if you got that ball forward and you're allowed to close and you aim right, you're going to power some high draws that start right, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say the D plane model, it's a great thing to look at just to understand what you just said. And that's simply looking at zero angle of attack, how things match up versus being a little bit down or a little bit up. Yeah. I mean, club path, attack angle are ever changing in the swing, but if you're going to hit up more, you need to aim your swing direction to the right.
Yes.
And you know what that means to most people is when I say, let's try to hit a push draw in your head, because that's going to typically help your path. Now you could hit a push fade from there, no problem. Yeah. But if you're trying to hit a ball that doesn't start in that direction in your mind, it's easy not to get it right. So usually what you have to do is you just have to play around a little bit till you get it right. But it's all right to close your stance, have your trail leg back a bit. It's all right to feel like you're swinging a little bit right of your target if you're trying to hit up more. Mm-hmm. But if you're already doing too much of that, you might need the opposite advice. So we want to give you what makes sense for your game. But if it was purely, hey, let's see how far we can hit the ball, get the lowest loft driver you can handle, get a longer, lighter club. Yeah. In terms of driver shaft length. If you're just building a speed club, right? Something you just want to wail away and see how far you can hit it. So let's say normal driver length is 45.5 inches. And again, we don't care. Let's just say you got 6 bullets and you just need to get 1 in play. You want to try 46 inches? That's cool. I think 48 for everyone, even though that's the legal max, you're not going to hit it very well. It's super difficult to time. But 46.5, you might have some fun with. Well, but keep it from getting too heavy, tee it up higher because you got less loft, and have some fun swinging it.
Well, going back to your very first point or second point, I think it was, with centeredness of contact. Yeah, theory says a longer shaft, bigger arc, more speed, but you diminish the chances of hitting that thing right in the sweet spot every single time.
There are folks that are good at hitting long clubs. One of my members, Henry Blue, is a great player in the Mid-Atlantic area. He's won a bunch of tournaments. He has the gift. He can swing a 46, 47-inch driver and hit it dead solid. Okay. But other people, if you go over 45 inches, they actually get worse. Mm-hmm. So that's why you want to use that dry erase marker. And just to review with what we're talking about, I'm showing you here with an iron, but you can see that little bit of white area on my club face. Yeah. That would be the center of the face. And I would just color that in and make sure you're hitting fairly close to center.
Yeah.
And understand, no matter what you do with the driver, the worst place to hit a driver for power is low heel.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to mess up, hit a little bit higher towards the toe. That'll keep your spin down a little bit. It'll still launch pretty high, but if you hit the ball low and in the heel, that's a recipe for a weak tee ball. So equipment's changed a bunch, but most of the drivers are much hotter, slightly higher in the face and a bit towards the toe. And if you're getting that and you can do it with a longer club, then you might have the ultimate weapon in your bag. If you're hitting the heel too much because the club's too long, grip down, figure it out, get a little further from it. There's a lot of outward force on the golf club at high speed, especially on a long driver. So you got to time that up. And that outward force is also why that tee height goes up.
Gotcha. So many incredible nuggets so far. One more question, and I'm just looking. I was fiercely scribbling notes. I love this one still. Let momentum work for you for more speed. Okay. Final one, and I guess it's building on that momentum thing. I watch Kyle, all these long drivers. You watch great long drivers of the golf ball, Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy. The follow through is always uninterrupted, unencumbered, free flowing, complete. But a lot of them, even Kyle, I love to watch Kyle because he goes. And yes, that forward foot may move, but he's always pretty well in balance. So let's talk about just putting the period, the exclamation point on this fast swing. Give us your take on the follow through, please.
Well, I think the follow through is a destination in the swing that you need to know where you're going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of folks, their destination is the ball. So they just run out of steam after they collide with the ball.
Uh-huh.
And one of the best things you can do, and do this in a place where you have enough clearance with the ceiling, but if you could swing towards a mirror, obviously not hitting a ball at the mirror, but swing as if you're hitting the ball into that mirror, hold your finish. That's a great exercise. And see where you get to. Imagine you're posing for a camera shoot and they're taking your picture into the finish. So it would be like I'm standing here and I'm swinging towards my camera.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you watch really good follow throughs, in my opinion, you'll see arms that are relaxed at the very end. You'll see the club come down off the follow through back in front of them like this.
Yeah.
Okay. You're also going to see them watch their shot.
Yeah. Not head down, for goodness sake.
They're in the shot. They're watching that ball flight. So I try to get my players to see the ball get to its apex and then bring the arms down with the ball.
Wow, I love it.
That's a really cool thing to do. And if you do that on your wedges, your distance control will get way better. I know we're talking about power and speed and hitting it hard, but the other piece of the follow through that you'll see is when you're finishing up, chest up, please.
Yeah,
I don't want you
chest
to
looking at the sky. Mm-hmm, yeah.
Finish proud. That's really important. And for bonus points, one of the things Mac O'Grady taught me a long time ago, eyes and shoulders in the same plane. That keeps you in balance. Sam Snead's a great one to watch on that.
And to that plane, if I might,
yeah,
so many folks, they get to that follow through, and I love the image of the eye line and the shoulder line parallel with each other. But so many folks finish too parallel to the ground, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
I'd like them to be sort of angled, still with a little attitude towards the target line.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of this, by the way, it might be tough on some folks to do this because they don't have the range of motion. Mm-hmm. But, if you gave me my wish list, those are the things I look for. And I want you to know where you're going in your swing. So when I say that, follow through, the more someone understands how the body here, chest out, means the spine is an inflection.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I've just sat up straight.
All day long, you're stuck in flexion.
You've said it so many times. Let me raise my microphone.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of things you can do. I've got a cool little thing coming soon. Mm-hmm. It's actually a book on how to hit it longer. It's not ready yet, but I'm working on it. and there'll be a video series that'll be out soon with it. But we're going to show people a lot of cool things to help you get to that finish, to help you generate more speed, to help you get better equipment optimization, and to get the mindset you need to hit the ball longer. But most importantly, no matter what you do, go have fun with it. Think about this as an adventure. Hit the ball, go find it. Don't be so controlling, because trying to control this golf ball, it's really hard. If you flip it to let me hit it and go find it, you're going to have a lot more fun out there.
Never a truer word been spoken. In fact, there was a number of true words that you leveled on us. Thank you for your time, Bernie. I certainly appreciate you. I know you've mentioned the book and the video series coming out. In the meantime, if folks are looking for you, please share the web address and social media.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. It's BernieNajar.com is my website, and at Bernie Najar Golf, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and most of the social channels. But the most important thing I'd like to say to everyone in closing is get out from that desk as much as you can. Get moving. Get into motion. Don't get stuck with your body, and you'll have so much more fun, not only on the course, but off the course. And I do have a book that they can also pick up on Amazon. It's called The Game, Enjoying Golf on and Off the Course. And I'll be happy to send you a copy if you like, Mark.
I would love that. Okay, folks, it's Bernie, Bernie, and Najar is Najar. Bernie, wonderful. I've so enjoyed this conversation. I'm actually going to get out and move myself after 3 interviews in a row. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate you.